Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 2021 meeting of Triangle Association of Freelancers. It's great to see all of you here this evening. We've got a wonderful guest in Seth Robertson, who is the executive editor of Vanderbilt Magazine, which is the alumni publication of Vanderbilt University. I sold an article to Seth, which was a profile of American Ninja Warrior superstar Megan Martin, who is a 2012 graduate of Vanderbilt. And that was my introduction to Seth. And I realized in talking with him that we had a lot to talk about regarding alumni magazines as potential markets for freelance writers. So I invited him to join us this evening. And Seth, I'd like to begin, and welcome, by the way. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to begin by asking you what your publishing experience or your writing experience was before you joined Vanderbilt Magazine. What did you do prior?
Yeah, so you may have heard me mention, well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me. Really appreciate everyone being here and yeah, look forward to talking about the magazine. Yeah, so before I was at Vanderbilt, one thing that I did was I worked for a literary agency. And it was a small agency located in Dallas. We sold both fiction and nonfiction, and to a lot of publishers in New York. And I was a junior member of the team at the time, and fresh out of college, but it was a good experience. It really kind of opened my eyes. I had been an English major, and it kind of opened my eyes to thinking about writing and editing in a new way that I hadn't really done before. So that was kind of my first introduction. And a few years later, yeah, I ended up at Vanderbilt about 14 years ago. So, and I've worked on publications that entire time. I first started as the editor of the business school magazine, and did that for 5 years. And then I had an opportunity to actually come over and work on Vanderbilt Magazine. So that's what I've been doing for about 9 at this point.
What attracted you to the position?
Yeah, so it was, so Vanderbilt Magazine goes to about it's published quarterly, and it goes to about 120,000 people, primarily alumni. And it's just considered the flagship publication of the university. And it was attractive to me because having worked at the business school, it was somewhat limited in terms of content. And this, just by the nature of it, having to reach that many people, it goes to all the different alumni across all our different schools, whether it's, medicine, nursing, education, divinity. And so we touch on a wide variety of content, and that was really attractive to me. It was kind of a breath of fresh air after being strictly, focused on business for a number of years.
How many of the other schools have a magazine? That surprised me when you mentioned that.
Yeah, so there used to be more, but currently, let me think about this. The business school, the law school, the nursing school, and the School of Medicine and Education. So there are five other publications. They don't come out as often, and they have smaller audiences. They come out twice a year. But our office, we're still involved in those somewhat, helping out in an editorial capacity with those.
Are those magazines open to freelancers, or are they specifically written by staff?
Yeah, they're open to freelancers. They are. It depends on the school, but I think they all, for example, I work closely with the editor of the nursing school magazine, and she, in this upcoming issue, I know of at least 2 or 3 stories that are being written by freelancers. So
my wife receives the nursing magazine. She received her DNP from Vanderbilt, and still gets that. I'd like to talk a little bit about your responsibilities as executive editor of Vanderbilt Magazine. What does your job entail specifically?
So a little bit of everything. I end up doing, story development is part of it, and primarily looking at, the feature well. There is, so my boss is the editor-in-chief of the magazine, and we work together on coming up with story ideas, not just for the features, but other parts of the magazine. I end up assigning a lot of those stories. I used to write more, but I've gotten more responsibility as time has gone on. So I have to kind of, I've had to give some of that up, but, and beyond that, a lot of it is just kind of working closely with our magazine designer, and we have photographers on staff, and just making sure that we're kind of taking the right approach in terms of, layout, design, photography. And I'm also involved in the online magazine as well, helping post those stories and make sure that they get distributed, in different channels for Vanderbilt.
Is the content for the online magazine the same as the print edition, or is that a second option for writers?
It is the same content. We don't post the entire magazine from cover to cover. A large chunk of the magazine is our class notes and obituaries, and we don't post those, but all the other stories and profiles make it on there pretty much. So if we hire a freelancer to do something, most likely it will appear in print and online. So
how old is the magazine?
It's more, it's more than 100 years old now.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think we celebrated 100 years, maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And you said it's published quarterly? Is that correct?
Quarterly. Yeah, that's right. So
I want to take a half a step back and ask you what the general function is of alumni magazines like Vanderbilt Magazine. What is its purpose for the school and for the students and for the readers, the alumni readers?
Yeah. So I think, I can probably say this, not just for Vanderbilt Magazine, but for all, regardless of the university or college. Like, I think one of the primary functions is to strengthen the connections within that community, and particularly alumni who have graduated and moved on with their lives, but maintaining that connection with them, I think, is really important. I guess the cynical side of it is, like, the university obviously is looking to maintain a fundraising channel too, as a way to, like, reach those alumni and get them to open their pocketbooks and their wallets. But from our perspective, it's about telling engaging stories that, surprise and delight and inform our readers, and just get them to kind of take notice of what Vanderbilt's doing, even if they've been out, graduated 50 years ago or 25 years ago, whatever it may be, and hopefully get them just to want to stay involved in some capacity.
Do you have any idea what percentage of America's colleges and universities publish an alumni magazine like that?
I don't, but so I do on occasion attend. There's a organization called CASE, which I don't know if anyone's familiar with, but it's the Council for Advancement and Support of Education. And it's a nationwide organization. They have editors forums regularly that all these alumni magazine editors go to. And every time I attend one of those, I'm always come away amazed at how many, like, just the breadth and of publications out there. I mean, so many different colleges, they almost all have them, and they may not be printed quarterly. Some of them may be online only, but there's still a lot of need for that within higher education. So I'd say, quite almost all of them, I would imagine.
I'd like to talk a bit about the ways that alumni magazines are both similar to and different from more mainstream magazines, the kind you would buy, on a newsstand. And let's start by asking you, in what ways are they unique?
Um, so I think, and so it's been interesting to me, just to back up. So, having been an English major, I wasn't a journalism major. And I think people that get into alumni magazines who come from sort of that more concrete, strict journalism background are always surprised, because alumni magazines are really, it's all about telling, presenting the university and its members of the community like the best possible light. And so one thing that's different is we regularly show drafts to the people who are interviewed, and if they, within reason, if they want to so to speak, massage their quotes, if they're not happy with how they sound, there's a lot of leeway, as opposed to like kind of a commercial magazine where someone writes the story and that's it, and it's more kind of hard hitting and black and white. But with university publications, it's really about I don't really like the word propaganda, but it is kind of like this way of just telling this very specific story about the institution, and doing it in the sort of the best possible light, and maybe glossing over some of the things that that you wouldn't necessarily want in there in the story. So
Controversy is not something that you seek.
exactly, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Absolutely.
Other than that approach to your content, though, are there other similarities to more mainstream publications?
I mean, I would say that as time has gone on, I think to stay relevant and to get to stay on the reader's coffee table, you really have to kind of adopt what commercial magazines have done. And so I think you've seen a lot of alumni magazines increasingly try to improve their writing, the types of stories they're telling, photography, design, to the point where some magazines, it's hard to tell whether it's actually like a commercial magazine that you would see on a newsstand versus one you would get in the mail from your university. And I think that's a good thing, that it's sort of forced publications like ours to kind of up our game, and in order to stay relevant and get people's attention. So
great. Seth, right now, what departments in Vanderbilt Magazine are most open to freelance submissions?
It kind of runs the gamut. I mean, we're always looking for feature stories, and typically those are in the 1,500 to 2,000 word range. But we also we have shorter alumni profiles that are more like 300 to 400 words, and then more like the story that you did for us that is kind of in between, kind of a more expanded profile of someone that kind of digs a little deeper into their story. Yeah, we're pretty we're pretty open to across the different sections of the magazine for hiring freelancers.
What percentage of the magazine, each issue, would you say is written by freelance contributors?
I'd say maybe like 30%, if I had to guess. So we do have a sizable team or on staff who are writing, for example, news releases for the university, whether it's like something related to research or some institutional initiative that's happening. And what we'll do is we'll take those stories and repurpose them and kind of repackage them for our campus news section, our research section, our sports section. We have an arts and culture section. So most of that content is kind of repurposed and has been written by people on staff. But the other areas of the magazine, it may not always be freelance written, but a sizable portion of those are.
Can you discuss the pay scale at Vanderbilt? I get the impression that alumni magazines have a good budget and that you pay your contributors a very competitive rate.
Yeah, I mean, we typically pay around $1 a word. So and that, it depends on the story, but if say you're writing a feature story and it requires interviewing more people than a typical story or more kind of legwork or research, it could possibly even go higher. But generally, I think it's kind of in the dollar per word range.
Sorry, I lost my place here. How many unsolicited proposals would you say you receive monthly from writers such as myself?
Yeah, well, so I would say, I mean, generally speaking, we probably hear from 2 or 3 freelancers a month. But I would say the typical query that we get is not specific. It's maybe just more like an introduction, like, here's who I am. I'd like to write for you. Here's my site. Maybe here are some clips. But there's not like a specific story idea attached to it. Sometimes those catch our attention, but I think it does help to be specific, much like you were when you approached us.
It's interesting that you say that, though, that a lot of what you get are basically letters of introduction. I'm a writer. Can I write for you? But they don't offer you any topics or something like that. That sounds common.
Yeah, I think more that is pretty common for us, and I think it maybe comes from people wanting to not put themselves into pigeonhole themselves. So they might be like, I love writing about healthcare. I love writing about business or whatever. If you ever have a need for a story on that, I'm happy to write for you. But when you get a lot of inquiries like that, it's hard for somebody to stand out unless they have some really like kind of stellar background and an impressive list of publications that they've written for.
How do you respond to them typically?
I mean, we'll respond and thank them for their inquiry and say, that we do, we keep them on file, and there are times where we will refer back to inquiries we've gotten to see, if there's a story that we've had trouble pairing with a writer, especially if it's, like I said, somebody who's kind of pitched themselves for a particular topic or area of expertise, then we will go back to those and refer back to them. But generally we just kind of thank them and say, we'll keep this in mind, for the future.
But you would prefer a pitch, an actual pitch, an article idea. You would prefer that rather than just, I'm a writer, can you use me kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, like, your example is a really good one. And I don't know if everybody heard it in the beginning, but Don came to us and had this idea already in the works, there's this alumna who is a pole vaulter at Vanderbilt, and she graduated almost a decade ago. She's now a pretty big star on American Ninja Warrior, the TV show. She's also a rock climber, and she really wasn't on our radar. Don had kind of done the work to kind of look into her story and said, I don't know if you're aware of her, but here's who she is, and I'd love to write this story for you. So it, and of course it helped that, Don, you had good clips and a background, that you'd written for other magazines. And so it was just kind of a no-brainer, like this kind of makes our job easier, where people are coming to us with ideas. It may be that we had already done something on her, but in this case, it worked out really well. So.
Well, I was excited for that opportunity, Seth. I really was. Let's talk next about your specific editorial needs.
Yeah.
We've got in this organization, we've got a tremendous number of writers who write nonfiction. What are you looking for? What are you most in need of that you would like to see more of? And on the other side of the coin, what kind of ideas are you just tired of completely and would prefer not to see for a while?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. This kind of builds on what we were just saying. Like it's great to see specific ideas, and I think it does make a difference when someone has kind of gone to the trouble to look for interesting stories that involve a Vanderbilt alum or a faculty member, and kind of determine a way to tell that story and come to us with that. I mean, I think it also kind of extends to, it's helpful when someone has actually familiarized themselves with the university itself. Part of our being, the flagship publication, we kind of have to convey these values that Vanderbilt wants to, that Vanderbilt subscribes to. And so if you take the time to kind of go to the Vanderbilt website or whatever university you might want to write for and kind of look and see what they're pushing, what they, say sets them apart, I think that helps to kind of make you think about, well, how does this story check those boxes? And if it does, the even better. I think you're going to get people's attention. So, love to see things like that. As far as like pitches that we get too many of, I mean, I wouldn't say, I mean, if anything, it's kind of what I was saying before. It's just sort of the vague, sort of general, hi, this is who I am. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't really have a hook to it, to necessarily get our attention.
Well, on that, how do you like to be approached by a freelance contributor? What's the best way to get your attention with an article idea?
Yeah, I mean, we get all our queries through email these days, I think if you can present it in a way that, I mean, we approach all our stories, and this kind of harkens back to when I was working for the literary agency, like when it was, whether it was fiction or nonfiction, like how do you really like pull the reader in? And that kind of extends to like your letter and or your email, and having a compelling story to tell really makes a difference. I think the more that you can kind of like make it more sort of concrete and specific, the better. That's the way at least I think about it.
Aside from the just offering a letter of introduction rather than a specific article idea, what have you found to be the most common types of mistakes that freelancers make in approaching you for the very first time? Not enough detail?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I necessarily see mistakes per se. I mean, I think, there are, like, on occasion someone might come to us and maybe they haven't proofread their email very well or their resume very well. And so that definitely sets the tone. If you see something that, not that I'm poring over the email looking for like grammatical errors, but it does just if there are avoidable mistakes that come through in the email or whatever they're sending, that's kind of a strike against them right there. But I can't say that I necessarily see that often. And like I said, we only maybe get 2 or 3 inquiries a month. So most of the people we hear from are reputable and have experience in the field, but it doesn't always necessarily translate into work because I think maybe it's just more general than it should be, not as specific.
Seth, does the school offer archives of back issues that people can access to kind of see what you've done before, get a look at the voice of the magazine before they submit an idea?
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely encourage that. I think so. If you go to the easiest way to do it is if you go to VU, so V is in Vanderbilt, u.edu /magazine. So vu.edu /magazine. That'll take you to our homepage, and we all the sections are kind of broken out, the different departments of the magazine, and you can click on more underneath those sections to kind of see different examples. And then I think on the right column, there's on the right side, there is a link to past issues. So you can kind of go and see what the covers look like and what were in those specific issues. And I think that's, really good to do regardless of the university that you might be trying to approach, is just to get a feel for what kind of stories they're telling and how they look and the kind of the points they're trying to get across.
Seth, this has been awesome fun for us. I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. I'd like to conclude by asking you if you have any final advice for writers interested in contributing to Vanderbilt Magazine, anything that you would like to see them do that would get your attention and would improve their chances of getting an assignment.
Yeah, I mean, I and this is what I've told people too when I was working for the literary agency, like it's important to be persistent. And this is probably something that you all talk about a lot. Like it's not unusual to get no response or rejection letters. I think if you keep at it, and like I said, if you have there's actually a guy a freelancer who has approached us, and he's written for us before, and he's pretty good about every once in a while he'll check in and he'll have an actual like specific idea, like, hey, have you thought about doing something on so and so? I see that she graduated from Vanderbilt in the 1980s, so he's doing his research. It doesn't always work out. There may be a reason why we can't do it, but he's presenting these ideas that at least sort of help nudge the door open, and keeps them sort of top of mind for us too. So, keep at it and just keep the good ideas coming. We're always open to hearing pitches. So,
and I think that the advice that you're offering is applicable to pretty much all alumni magazines in the United States. I think the content that they provide and their mission is essentially the same. So from my own experience, I would encourage if you meet somebody who is doing something really interesting, something unique, one of your questions should be, where did you go to college? And, that I think could very easily turn into something. Seth, this was awesome. Do you mind if we turn it over to see if there's any audience questions?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Elizabeth, anybody raise their hand? Does anybody have anything for Seth? Joel? Joel?
I just need the website address repeated once more.
Yeah, sure. It's so if you type in vu.edu /magazine. And that'll take you to our website.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And I understand, I presume an article that centers on a Vanderbilt alumnus or alumni is ahead of the game in terms of acceptability.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a good point. I mean, we do. So, Vanderbilt being in Nashville, and, occasionally we might hear from someone who, suggests a story that maybe like doesn't really have much of a connection to Vanderbilt per se. But as our mission, we really want it sort of tied firmly to the university, whether it is about alumni or students or faculty, whatever it may be, there needs to be that connection.
Okay.
Any other questions for Seth?
Do we write to him? Do we write to you specifically, Seth, or to whom do we address a query?
Yeah, I mean, you can write to me, and we have a relatively small team, and we end up talking about the ideas among us. But yeah, by all means, you can email me. Don, are you going to share my email, or do you need?
I'll let you do it.
Yeah, that's fine. No, it's so my email address is Seth, that's SETH .Robertson, ROBERTSON @vanderbilt.edu.
I promise you will not be inundated with bad ideas or letters of introduction. That's not us.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Listen, I mean, like I said, we're always open to hearing ideas. So
we appreciate that. Anybody else before we let Seth go? Any other questions? All right, Seth, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This was wonderful. I hope that you do get some very good ideas from our membership. We really appreciate the time you've given us tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Information as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
You too.